Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at the murder of Libby Lewis,
Oh, yeah.
based on the Wondery podcast, 48 Hours, the Blackout murder of Libby Lewis.
Okay.
So this case takes place in Hemphill, Texas, which is a small town.
hmm
And this was just a tragic event that really shook the whole community.
Small town murders are always so fascinating because, it's like
Yeah.
everyone knows everyone and there's so many secrets and like close relationships.
Right. And it seems like, such a peaceful place. And then
Right.
something like this happens and it's like,
Yeah.
oh wow, how
Yeah.
how did this happen here?
Yeah. And it makes you wonder like what goes on behind closed doors.
Exactly. So let's start by talking about Libby.
Okay.
So Libby was 19 years old,
Mhm.
aspiring nurse.
Well,
She worked at a local nursing home
okay.
and she was just beloved by everyone. Like
Sounds like a really good person.
yeah, she was just a bright light in everyone's lives. She really loved working with the residents at the nursing home.
Oh.
And she wanted to be a physician's assistant someday.
So she had like a big heart, like she wanted to help people.
Yeah, she is very much a caretaker.
That makes it even more sad, when you hear about these cases where the victim was such a good person.
It's like, why her?
Exactly.
So then we have to talk about Matthew Edgar,
Okay.
who was Libby's boyfriend,
Hmm.
older
I'm
boyfriend.
older.
Yeah, he was 23.
Okay, so not like a huge age gap, but
Right, but still,
yeah, at that age, like 4 years
he's
is
significant, yeah.
kind of a big deal.
And he was already married with 2 kids.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah, so their relationship was
complicated.
very complicated. There were a lot of red flags.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, he was allegedly cheating on her and abusing her.
Oh, no, that's terrible.
Yeah, and there are text messages that support this.
Oh, wow. So there's like actual evidence?
Yeah, and even a photo that Libby sent to her cousin of her with a black eye.
Oh, my.
It's just really disturbing.
Yeah, you have to wonder, like, did anyone else know about this? Did anyone try to help her?
That's a question that I kept asking myself throughout the whole podcast.
It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you think about all the people who might have been able to do something,
Right.
but didn't.
Right, and maybe we'll find out more about that as we go along.
Yeah, I'm curious to see.
But before we get to that, we have to talk about another key player.
Okay.
Matthew's ex-wife, Montana Bull.
So now there's an ex-wife in the picture.
Yes, and this is where it gets really strange.
I'm all ears.
So Matthew is married to Montana,
Right.
but he's also dating Libby,
Mm-hmm.
and then Libby and Montana become friends.
What? That's so weird.
I know, right?
Like, what kind of friend are you if you're friends with the person your husband is cheating on you with?
I mean, maybe Libby was just looking for someone to confide in.
Yeah, maybe. But it's still,
It's just strange.
yeah, it's a weird dynamic for sure.
It really is. And I can't even imagine the kind of tension that created between all three of them.
Especially in a small town like that where everyone knows each other's business.
Exactly. So this complicated relationship between Matthew Libby and Montana is going to play a big part in what happens next.
Okay, so let's rewind to the night of the murder.
All right, so it's Halloween 2020,
Spooky.
and there's a party at Bobby Ozan's house.
All right.
And we learn from Montana that Matthew had actually planned to propose to Libby that night.
He was going to propose with his ex-wife there.
Yeah, and with Libby obviously not knowing that he was still married.
Oh my God, that's so messed up.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of drama just waiting to explode.
Talk about a recipe for a disaster.
And to make things even worse, Libby decides to stay overnight at Bobby's house after the party.
Oh, so she rejected his proposal.
Well, he didn't actually get the chance to propose because she just decided to stay at Bobby's.
Ouch, that must have bruised his ego.
Yeah, I can only imagine how Matthew reacted to that.
Yeah, especially with his history of like controlling behavior.
Right? It probably felt like a major loss of control for him.
I bet. So what happened? Did he just let her stay at Bobby's?
Not exactly. Things escalated pretty quickly.
Okay, how so?
Well, we know from Montana that Matthew got really jealous and angry, and he actually tried to attack her.
Oh, wow, he got violent.
Yeah, Bobby, the host of the party, had to physically restrain Matthew.
So he was like out of control.
Yeah, it was a pretty scary scene.
I bet. And Libby and Montana were okay.
Yeah, they managed to get away safely.
Oh, thank goodness.
But unfortunately, it doesn't end there.
Oh, no, what else happened?
So after the altercation, Matthew starts sending threatening text messages to both Libby and Montana.
Like what kind of threat?
Like really scary stuff. One text said, "I will take your life, her life, and his life. Mark my words."
Oh my God, that's terrifying. Like he's actually threatening to kill people.
It's chilling.
Yeah, you would think someone would have called the police after seeing those messages.
You would think, right.
Yeah, it's like a clear sign that he's dangerous. But it sounds like no one did anything.
And then in another text to Montana, Matthew says, I'm leaving. Better get here and get your kids.
So he's going after Libby.
It sure sounds that way.
And did he know where she was?
Well, that's the thing. He knew where his rifle was.
Oh, no.
And it just seems like this text to Montana is like a warning.
Like a premonition almost.
It's very eerie.
Yeah, this is getting really scary.
And it gets worse.
Oh, no. What happens next?
So in the early morning hours, Libby is found dead in her car.
Oh, no.
She was shot in the neck.
This is awful.
And guess who's found nearby covered in blood but uninjured?
Matthew.
Matthew Edgar.
Of course.
But here's the thing. He claims to have no memory of what happened.
He's saying he blanked out.
Exactly.
Wow, that's convenient. Like, how can you not remember killing someone?
Exactly. And that's going to be a major point of contention throughout this case.
I can imagine. Blackouts are such a tricky thing legally.
Right. And it makes you wonder, like, is he telling the truth or is this just a way to avoid responsibility?
That's what the rest of this deep dive is going to try to figure out.
Exactly. So stay tuned because we're going to uncover a lot more about this case in part 2.
I can't wait to hear what happens next.
It's a wild ride.
I bet.
So make sure you come back for the next part of our deep dive into the murder of Libby Lewis.
I'll be here. Yeah, blackouts can be a tricky legal defense.
It makes you wonder.
Like, on the one hand, you know, some people can legitimately black out, especially with, like, extreme intoxication.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's really hard to prove.
And how do you prove that you don't remember something?
Exactly. And juries tend to be pretty skeptical.
Especially when it seems convenient.
Yeah, especially when it seems like the person is just trying to get away with something.
Right. And in this case, Matthew claims to not remember anything.
But he was able to drive to the scene, you know, send those texts.
And even retrieve Libby's phone and keys.
Like, how do you do all that and not remember any of it?
It's hard to believe.
It really is. Even his own lawyer, Rob Hughes, admitted that this type of defense is incredibly rare.
And that it's almost impossible to win when you have so much evidence pointing to guilt.
Yeah, it's like the evidence is stacked against him.
But let's back up for a second.
Okay.
I want to talk about the crime scene itself.
All right.
What did the investigators find? And did it support Matthew's story or point to something else?
Well, the scene was messy.
What do you mean by messy?
Well, they found Libby in her car.
Mm-hmm.
Driver's seat was reclined.
Okay.
She was shot once in the neck.
Oh, wow.
Matthew's rifle was there at the scene.
Okay.
But there were no fingerprints on it.
What?
And the DNA evidence was inconclusive.
So they couldn't definitively link him to the murder weapon?
Not from the physical evidence, at least.
Okay, so what about his behavior after the shooting?
Did he seem genuinely shocked and remorseful?
Well, according to Sheriff's investigator J.P. McDonough, who interviewed Matthew at the hospital, his demeanor was very suspicious.
Really? In what way?
McDonough said that Matthew was incredibly calm and detached.
Like almost too calm.
Exactly. Like he wasn't showing any of the emotions you would expect from someone who had just lost their girlfriend.
Oh, wow. That's really strange.
McDonough said he didn't even shed a tear.
It's like he was trying to distance himself from what happened.
Right, or like he was trying to hide something.
Yeah, it definitely raises some red flags.
And then you have those text messages he sent to Montana.
Right after the shooting.
Mm-hmm. He practically boasts about what he'd done.
Really? What did he say?
Well, when Montana asked him where Libby was, he just replied, dead.
Oh, my God.
It's just so cold and callous.
It's chilling. It doesn't sound like someone who's in shock or confused.
Right. It's like he's completely indifferent to what happened.
It's like he has no remorse whatsoever.
It's very disturbing.
Yeah. And speaking of disturbing, we can't forget about Matthew's mother, Cindy Hogan.
Right. She really went above and beyond to protect her son.
Oh, yeah. She even tried to blame the cartel.
The cartel.
Yeah. She claimed that Matthew owed money to a dangerous drug cartel and that they had targeted Libby as a way to get to him. I know it sounds crazy,
It's just something out of a movie.
Right. But investigators quickly dismissed that theory.
I bet.
They said there was absolutely no evidence to support it.
It sounds more like a desperate attempt to deflect suspicion from her son.
It really does.
And her efforts to shield Matthew didn't stop there.
What else did she do?
Well, as the investigation progressed and the evidence against Matthew mounted, Cindy actively helped him violate the conditions of his bond.
Hold on. He was out on bond.
Yeah, after his initial arrest, he was released on bond due to COVID-related court delays.
Wow, that seems risky.
Yeah, and he was ordered to wear an ankle monitor, adhere to a curfew, and avoid any contact with Libby's family.
So of course he didn't follow the rules.
Of course not. He violated his curfew multiple times, tampered with his ankle monitor, and even pressed charges against Libby's mother, Darcy Bass, for confronting him at a convenience store.
Are you serious? He pressed charges against the victim's mother.
Yeah, it's like he was intentionally trying to provoke them.
That's so messed up.
And his blatant disregard for the conditions of his release ultimately led to the most shocking twist in this case.
What happened?
He disappeared
He escaped.
right before his trial was set to begin.
Oh my God, this is insane.
I know, right?
It's like something out of a movie.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 3.
I can't wait to hear what happens next.
Okay, so last we left off, Matthew had just vanished into thin air
Like a ghost.
right before his trial was supposed to start.
I can't believe he was able to get away.
It really is kind of mind-blowing.
You'd think with an ankle monitor and everything, they'd be able to keep tabs on him.
Right, you would think so.
But I guess he had help.
He did. His mother, Cindy Hogan, was a big part of his escape.
She helped him.
Yeah, she actually admitted to giving him money and a car.
Wow, so she was like an accomplice.
Basically, yeah.
I don't understand how a mother could do that knowing what her son is accused of.
It's hard to wrap your head around it.
Like, you would think a mother's instinct would be to want justice for the victim.
You would think
But I guess in this case, family loyalty trumped everything else.
it's just a sad situation all around.
Yeah, it really is.
But what about the trial?
Did it just stop because he wasn't there?
It's crazy, but it actually continued.
They went through with the trial even though he was a fugitive.
Yeah, it's rare, but in cases like this where the defendant runs away, the court can proceed in absentia.
So he was basically tried without being present.
That's right.
What about his lawyer?
Yeah. Rob Hughes was left in a tough spot, trying to defend a client who's not even there to cooperate. I can't imagine.
I mean, what do you even say?
Right.
Like, oh, my client's innocent, but he's too busy running from the law to show up and tell you himself.
It's pretty much a losing battle.
And how did the trial go?
Even without Matthew, the prosecution had a really strong case.
So they still presented all the evidence.
Oh, yeah, they had all the text messages, the witness testimonies detailing Matthew's crazy behavior.
And the fact that his rifle was the murder weapon.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they had a slam dunk case even without him physically being there.
They did, and the jury, after hearing all the evidence, came back with a guilty verdict.
He was convicted.
Yes, Matthew Edger was convicted of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison.
Wow.
All while he was still on the run.
That's incredible.
I know, right? It was a victory for Libby's family.
But a bittersweet one.
Definitely, because it didn't bring her back.
And it didn't really give them closure while he was still out there somewhere?
Right, so the verdict was in, but the story wasn't over.
Because the manhunt was on?
Exactly.
It must have been terrifying for the community.
It was for everyone, especially for Libby's family, knowing that this guy who murdered their daughter was still out there.
I can't even imagine.
But Libby's mother, Darcy, she didn't let fear paralyze her.
What did she do?
She channeled her grief into this relentless pursuit of justice.
She was determined to find him.
Absolutely. She worked tirelessly with law enforcement.
Putting up posters and everything.
Oh, yeah. She even made her own wanted posters and put them up all over town.
Wow, that's dedication.
It really is.
Like she refused to let him win.
Exactly. And eventually her persistence paid off.
They found him.
They did.
Oh.
Well, after nearly a year of searching and chasing leads, U.S. Marshal Jeff Coulter and his team got a tip.
Someone called in with information.
Exactly.
Oh, right.
That Matthew might be hiding out at a friend's house.
Really?
Yeah, and I get this, the house was right near his grandparents' property.
So he was hiding in plain sight.
Pretty much. And the irony is, it was his own mother who accidentally led them to him.
What do you mean?
Well, Cindy was spotted visiting the house where Matthew was hiding.
Oh, so they were watching her.
That's right. And her visit raised suspicions.
So they decided to check it out?
Exactly. And they found him.
Wow. So the person who helped him escape was also the reason he got caught?
It's kind of poetic justice.
It really is.
So how did they arrest him?
Was it like a big raid?
It was a pretty intense operation.
I bet.
Coulter and his team, along with Sheriff's investigator McDana and his deputies, surrounded the house at night.
Under cover of darkness.
Yeah, they had to move quickly and quietly because they knew Matthew could be armed and dangerous.
I bet that was nerve-wracking.
I'm sure it was.
So what happened?
They waited for hours just watching the house.
Until they saw him.
Exactly. They finally spotted him on the back porch and they moved in.
Wow.
They swarmed the house, shouting for him to surrender.
Did he put up a fight?
No, he was totally caught off guard and didn't resist arrest.
So it was over just like that.
Pretty much.
What did he say when they arrested him?
Well, according to McDonough, the first thing Matthew asked was, "Have you proved my innocence yet?"
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
It's like he was still living in this fantasy world where he wasn't responsible for anything,
Right, like he still thought his Blackout story was going to save him.
even after he was convicted.
It's unbelievable.
It really shows you just how delusional he was.
Yeah, he was totally incapable of accepting responsibility for his actions.
And what happened to his mother?
Well, Cindy Hogan was eventually charged with hindering apprehension and tampering with evidence.
So she had to face consequences for her actions.
She did.
It's a sad ending for everyone involved.
It really is.
Libby's family got justice, but it came at such a high price.
Right, and Matthew's family is now dealing with the fallout of his choices.
It's a reminder that violence affects so many people, not just the immediate victim.
And it makes you wonder if this tragedy could have been prevented.
If someone had recognized the warning signs.
Exactly like those red flags in Matthew's behavior. The controlling behavior, the manipulation, the anger.
We need to be more aware of those signs.
And be willing to speak up if we see something concerning.
If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out for help.
You don't have to suffer in silence.
There are resources available like the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Exactly. And let's all remember Libby's story and honor her memory by speaking up and advocating for change.
So that hopefully something like this never happens again.
That's right. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was a heavy one.
It was, but important.
Very important.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a true crime case.
See you then.